Absolutely. I think you filled us in pretty good there on that. Let's go ahead and ask the next question. What is happening in the Gulf? And can you give us an update on what's going on, any recent events that maybe we should be aware of?
I think people should be aware that there has been a concerted effort to do testing in different areas, and then the NOAA had actually had a static map of the loop current that goes, down the coast of Florida and around to the Atlantic Ocean. And they had guesstimated that if anything was going to happen in regards to oil or contaminants or dispersants, that it would hit the beaches at Sarasota first. Well, it did, because on September 22nd, I was working with an initiative called Testing the Water, and there was a sample. It was a sand sample taken, and it came back at 193 parts per million. So, and that was just a simple sand sample. Now, I had other people tell me that we could have definitely a history of oil and contaminants and dispersants buried in our sand, even from as far back as Katrina, because we know that some of those rigs also dribbled oil and there was dispersants used. But this was a brand new sand sample that was taken earlier in September, and then the results came back September 22nd. Now I'm on the advisory committee for an organization called the Gulf Coast Barefoot Doctors, and there are reports from all over Florida of people sick, upper respiratory infections, colds, pretty much everything that Dr. Ricky Ott described as the symptoms or being symptomatic. And this is quite alarming, especially to me as I'm a healthcare worker, to see this happening in our community, but yet the doctors aren't even aware. And there's been no medical alerts issued from the very beginning. The only one who ever issued a medical alert was Dr. Ricky Ott, who was she was the Exxon Valdez survivor, but also a toxicologist. She's an expert in oil spills and the contaminants that come along with that. She also wrote the book Not One Drop, which would be interesting reading for anybody wanting to know what's happening on this spill. It pretty much already happened at Exxon Valdez.
Absolutely. I admire the work of Dr. Ricky Ott, and we have some new guests in the chat room. I just wanted to tell them that if you're hearing some background noise and it sounds like a big party, well, it really is. Anita's in a bar, actually. I think the Fly Bar. I'm not exactly sure where it is. I'm sure it's in Hillsborough County.
In Tampa.
In Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, downtown.
Downtown Tampa. So she's having a good time, in the laughter you hear back there. Don't worry about it. We're doing a on the fly interview, as it were. So anyway, we're having some issues with our phone lines, but we're seeming to work those out. And Anita, I want to just tell them who you are again here. Anita is a licensed medical professional. She's a writer. She is a blogger, a photographer, and now she sits on the Hillsborough, Florida County Soil and Water Conservation Board. And she was just recently elected. She is a citizen journalist, I think, foremost, in that that's how I found out about her, on Facebook and the other social networking. And if you look at the stream, that website is an excellent website to go and find out about who Anita Stewart really is. And I think it's very important for us as Americans to support citizen candidates who are backed not by the system, not by Wall Street, but by a passion to improve our environment and to serve. She is a servant. So if you have any questions, I know, some of our listeners aren't in Florida, and maybe her winning that election doesn't, they're trying to put two and two together. Why would you do an interview? Well, her being on the Conservation Board gives us an inside seat into what's really going on, beyond the media hype and everything else that we hear. Everything is fine. Now we know somebody who sits on a board who looks at these problems and doesn't have a problem telling us the truth. So, Anita, I just wanted to give that out again because I'm getting some questions in the chat room about who you are and what you do. Please feel free to go ahead and answer any questions, as you are probably, and I see you right now in the chat room as well. So we were talking earlier before the show when we were doing the prep about a question I have specifically. Are they still spraying Corexit in Florida to the best of your knowledge? Or could you just give us a little bit of information on what you do know, if you do know anything?
What I do know is that there was increased activity during the night at MacDill Air Force Base since April 20th, since the oil spill happened. But when I was speaking to people that actually live probably about 10 miles from here, that live right off the base, they were really telling me about it like the first couple of weeks of May. It seemed like there was just lots and lots of air traffic. But up in the Panhandle, of course, that's pretty far from here. All of the people that I know, that I connect with on Facebook and other places, are telling me that they are seeing the dispersant sprayed, that black choppers, unmarked aircraft, military C-1.
Well, looks like we're having a little bit of a connection issue again with Skype. As we go along...
Probably Coast Guard, but I can't confirm. To 3 miles away from the coast, and that's not true. I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, never mind. We had a little bit of a problem with Skype in the audio, so that last segment, that last little part you said, we missed it. Would you repeat it?
Oh, yeah. What I was going to say was, as far as the spraying goes, I can't confirm that that's what they were doing out of MacDill, but there was a lot of increased traffic. The people up in the Panhandle, that live up in the Panhandle that I network with, are telling me that the spraying is done continuously. It's done with military aircraft. It's done with aircraft at night with their lights off, helicopters and aircraft. They have we actually have pictures of the canisters of Corexit that are being sprayed off of the sides of boats, Carolina skiffs, and vessels of opportunity. So we're getting, everybody I'm networking with is telling me this. Now, the law states that they can't spray the dispersant within 3 miles of the coast, but they are doing this within the coastline, on people, on intracoastal waterways, in people's yards. I mean, this is documented and by a number of different unrelated eyewitnesses.
Absolutely. I've seen some of the reports, especially the one in the pool where the man just was really ill after coming home from work and jumping in the pool for a little recreation. Right. So I know that the media is...
What he was doing was he was actually mowing his lawn. He got in the pool, and this was in Brooksville. This is probably about 50 miles north of Tampa here. So he was in Brooksville at his house about 2 to 3 miles inland, mowing his lawn, got in the pool, and became so sick with diarrhea, with blood coming out of his anus. I mean, it was... Yeah. And what happened was they had the pool tested. The whole family became ill. And the pool came back with a huge, high concentration of Corexit.
So any guesses on how the Corexit got into the pool, folks? I know you're in the chat room and you're hearing this stuff, and you're probably going, how did that happen? Well, Anita, any guesses on how that Corexit got in the pool?
Unless there was a plane or a chopper or something might have flown over his house and accidentally they hit the spray. and it dumped into his pool, but there was no way that this was a trace amount to cause that severe of a reaction with the whole family. This was definitely a very, very high concentration of this stuff. There is a report, and I think I blogged it on Hoodoo some time ago, so I don't remember the exact parts per million. But we also have that documented several different places. I even had the family's name, and I can research that for you.
Well, I'd certainly appreciate.
Now, I've seen nothing here in Tampa. I've seen no planes doing this in the Tampa area. But that's not to say that it's not being done.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your candor, and I used to have a show here live on a local radio show, and I think I had access to about 500,000 people in their cars or whomever listening, and they've canceled my show. So I can really relate to how effective the blackout has been in the media. And I think that the only response that we can do is really just to continue on in any social forum that we can to get this information out. And so here is the nature of the question because of, the media blackout and how it's affecting us. Do you think that this is a depopulation program going on? I mean, I understand that there are over 200 million gallons of Corexit thus far that have been sprayed out there, and there is no reason for it. They don't intend on cleaning up the oil. So, I mean, if you're not cleaning up the oil, and we see it every day, it means it's not underwater. Why are you still spraying this stuff? Do you feel like you're kind of in a cage and maybe like a little bit like a guinea pig? I mean, they're risking your lives and the lives of your children.
That is exactly the million-dollar question because we know that Corexit is just one of many dispersants that's used, and it's been banned in 33 countries because of its toxic levels. What I think a lot of people don't understand with what's happening in the Gulf and how it relates to Floridians is the fact that our water supply, even our freshwater supply, is intricately linked with what's going on in the Gulf. We have what's called saltwater immersion here. So what happens in the Gulf happens to our water supply and happens to our intercoastal waterways and everything. And then we have the rainy season. So this stuff is actually being evaporated. This is third grade science. It's evaporated. It comes down in the form of rain over land. So I just read something the other day that it was in a book and it mentioned that the first 20 minutes of a rainfall is where the clouds are dumping most of the toxins. Any kind of toxin, anything that's evaporated up. And I've been telling people, don't go out when you know it's going to rain, don't go out. Let it rain, stay in, let it rain for 20 minutes, and then don't worry about it after that. But if you're taking your pets out or your kids out, of course, don't let them near the water, even the rainwater. And they do have an initiative up in Louisiana, I think it is, where they are testing the rainwater as well. This is all being formed and together by citizens.
I'm really glad they're starting to test the water from the rain because early on, right after the Deepwater Horizon, I don't call it a spill. It was something a little bigger than that, rupture.
It was a gusher.
Yeah.
Yeah, a volcano.
Absolutely.
Oil volcano.
Absolutely, but I started to report that there was actually toxic rain being rained down in coastal areas, and people laughed at me, said there's no possible way for the oil to evaporate and to be rained down. Yet we had video evidence and eyewitness testimony from people who were actually right there on the ground. So even when you have eyewitness testimony and, everything else, all the proof you need, you still get these naysayers who say, oh, that's not even possible. I mean, you guys, it's as if we don't understand any kind of science.